Welcome to Kidmin Backstage, a place where we talk about kids ministry and take a peek behind the scenes. We try to share a little bit of what we've learned works for us and some of our failures so you can avoid them. We release a new episode every Friday, and this is your backstage pass to see the magic or disaster that happens behind the scenes of our kids ministry. I'm your host, Gabe Baker, and today I am joined by Brother Kyle Ringeisen. How's it going?
Hey, brother. It's good.
Speaking of disaster.
That was something, yeah.
So Brother Kyle was just pulling into the church just a few minutes early, which is good. It helped.
Trying to be early.
A couple minutes early, and I was pulling out.
I was like, what's going on?
I forgot the cameras.
I thought at first you were like moving your car, and then you like drove right in front of me, and I was like, what is he doing? So I moved out of the way, and then like, oh, I got to run. I forgot the cameras. It's like, well, I mean, that's maybe step one. I don't know. But
yeah, well, this is audio first, but trying to keep the videos going. So some people that just listen, they're probably like, what? Who cares about the cameras?
It's good to see that even Brother Gabe's human sometimes.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I make a lot of mistakes. So that was a disaster behind the scenes that I think we averted, hopefully.
We got it taken care of.
All right, well, what are we talking about today?
The title for today is Refuse to Settle. Refuse
to settle. So, in the kingdom of God, creating a culture of excellence is not just a thing that's like, okay, that's nice to have. Mm-hmm. It's a necessity. Right. I think that we're basically, it's a calling. We're called to be excellent. And so, Sunday school ministries, if you commit to excellence as like just basically a core value that you must have, then it creates an environment where there's innovation, staff are inspired, kids are fully engaged. And so, but what we want to talk about today kind of is a culture of excellence doesn't just happen.
No.
It's intentional.
Oh, yeah.
It requires intentionality. It requires consistency. And it requires adjustment, as you go.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking of, some notes and some ideas when you sent me this today. And this doesn't like quite fit in this spot, but I feel like it has to be said at some point. So I was thinking of the story of Daniel and the lion's den, and oftentimes when the story is talked about or preached or we use it in Sunday school, it's all in reference to the fact that Daniel refused to stop worshiping God and praying to God no matter what the penalties were, and that's kind of the focus, which is definitely good, but a lot of times we don't talk about the reason why those presidents, as the Bible calls them, and those people that were important were so mad at Daniel, why they even had this feeling about him. And so we actually find that in the very beginning of Daniel chapter 6, where it talks about the fact that Daniel had a spirit of excellence.
Oh, yeah.
And
absolutely.
So this spirit of excellence that he had kind of set him apart and kind of put him in favor with the king. Mm-hmm. And that spirit of excellence is what made these people so mad, because he wasn't supposed to be put in front of them. And he was... Yeah.
And it showed their lack thereof.
Right, right. It kind of exposed them to some degree. So the Bible actually says in Daniel chapter 3 that because of the spirit of excellence, Daniel was preferred above the presidents and the princes. And that word preferred that we see here is actually an Aramaic word, which is mitnatza. Okay, I'm sorry, my Aramaic is not great today.
Yeah, you need to work on your Aramaic, brother.
Which actually means, it's translated as distinguished. So it's a way to distinguish yourself from everybody else. And so what I was thinking about is us in Sunday school, at least our Sunday school, and maybe this is how we all should be in Pentecost, is that we're different than the Sunday school down the road.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which there's nothing wrong with. We've talked about it many times. There's nothing wrong with felt charts and story time and all that kind of stuff. That's great. Mm-hmm. If that's what you guys are capable of doing. But there's really something to be said when, people walk into our Sunday school, and this is not just us. So there's, all throughout the country, but they walk, and it's just not what they would expect, because this is not what we're used to seeing. We're not used to seeing sets and actors and the kind of details we put into things, and it really creates a reputation. And it's like, well, if they're willing to put this kind of effort and detail into Sunday school, like, what does that say about the entire church?
About the church, exactly.
And so the spirit of excellence can then be something to where it affects everything, to where parents come up and say, my goodness, I never have seen anything like this. I wonder what the church is like. And so we've actually had parents that started coming after their kids came to Sunday school. And I really strongly believe it's because of the way we do things up here. It's because of that excellence that we put into it.
Yeah.
Where the kids go home and like, you wouldn't believe what we saw. I saw God breathing fire today, because my brother-in-law does that. And nobody's like, that's just way above and beyond. Or we got to go on a pirate ship. And I mean, all these things that we do up here, I know the kids go home and talk to their parents about it. And that has actually caused some parents to go, well, I want to go see what this is all about.
Yeah.
And so then they in turn come to church, and then we've actually had families that come because...
Well, it's like this story, I've mentioned this before. I need to have a more recent win, I guess. But there's a story a few years ago, some kids, now they were coming to our church. The whole family was coming to our church, but they were fairly recent in their culture. Our culture is we kind of don't miss church. I mean, you might go on vacation and stuff, but so they were going camping over the weekend. They were going to miss church, and they came back because the kids were so upset that they were going to miss Sunday school that the kids came back, the family came back from the camping trip early because the kids put up such a fuss about missing church and missing Sunday school. So
those are the kinds of stories that you hear and you're just like, we're doing something right.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're, that's a good thing to have.
Yeah.
I'm sure the parents were so confused, but it's amazing to hear that kind of stuff. But that's all because of this spirit of excellence we have in this church. Yeah. If it was just like every other Sunday school, if it was just like, every other church does it that they've ever known, you'd be like, well, I mean, it's fun, I guess, but there's no reason to not miss it. I mean, it's not a big deal. But because they don't want to miss the next step in the story, like, we have this happen. It's like it ends here, and then we always leave them hanging.
A cliffhanger.
Yeah. And they're just like, oh, I can't miss it. I can't miss the next week. I got to see what happens.
Yes. Well, and I wrote down what could be. As a first point is what could be, and I think that. So a lot of this topic, we've talked about excellence a lot on this podcast, but a lot of this comes directly from our Pastor Burgess, because he is now in his old age. He is a lot more prone to compliments than he used to be. And so not that he didn't give compliments before, but he is one that is always looking to be better. Yeah. And he doesn't criticize, but he will critique.
Yep.
And so like our music is pretty progressive. It's pretty good, music and singing, and all of that is because of him. He developed it years ago. Started developing that as just a culture in our church. And so when I think of what could be, as I learned from him a long time ago, is don't accept just this is how things are, right? Or this is how things always have been. And now I'm old enough that I have seen it. I've seen it where, okay, just a small example is right now we have music practices on Thursday nights. Right. And there's, if you count, and some people are in all of the practices, but if you count, there's a special group we have, Vibrant Praise. They start at 6:30, and then there's various other things that happen. There's choir and music and praise singers and all of this. So these practices happen back to back, and they go till 9:30, I believe, right? Right. So until 9:30. So it's pretty intense, I guess, 3 hours. And like I said, not everybody's there the whole time, but a lot of people are there throughout the whole thing. So I remember the day, I was a music director ages ago here. I remember the day talking to Pastor about, we like dreamed of being able to have any kind of weekly practice. And on top of that, we do before, pre-service, like run through, for a few minutes. And so that's just an example in music and kind of a way we do things. But there's an example of we thought about what could be. And it doesn't mean you can get there tomorrow. Right. But it means not sticking with the felt board.
Well, it's just like, like you were saying, what could we do? Like, where could we go? And then that's like, okay, we have this idea, then how are we supposed to get there? Right. And the one thing that I was thinking of is don't just settle for the easy stuff.
Yes.
The felt charts and the story time and the coloring pages, that's easy. I mean, any can set that up in a couple minutes.
And like you said, we're not saying there's something wrong with that.
No.
It's wrong if that's why. If by like design you're saying, you know what, for this segment or something, we use segments or building blocks, you're going to use a felt board, then fine, that's great. But so go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. It's just, you should challenge yourself and your team. Mm-hmm. You need to step outside of your comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before, but if you're not feeling a little bit uncomfortable, you're not in the right spot. You should push yourself a little bit and your team a little bit. I get the financial side of things and stuff like that. Not everybody has the time necessarily to devote to being as extensive as everybody like we might hear, but I'll just put this out there that Brother Gabe works a full-time job and also helps run our youth group and also does stuff every service and just a bunch of other things, and still finds time in his schedule to devote to Sunday school. And some of these weeks we're talking hours and hours and hours and hours because we're building sets and things like that. So there's always time we can find. It's just a matter of, do you have motivation to really do it?
Yeah.
And so don't just settle. And if you're settling, that's wrong. Like, again, there's nothing wrong with the felt charts, but if that's the only reason you're doing that is because it's easy and because that's all that you have time for, you probably should push yourself a little bit more than that and see what can happen.
Yeah. I wrote a note here, and I don't know if it made sense to you. It was just this thought in my head, so I wrote it down. But Matthew 6 talks about lay up treasures for heaven in heaven. And what I wrote is, it doesn't mean having your head in the clouds. There are things we do with excellence that no one notices, but God notices. And so what I kind of meant by that is, I've known some people that, and you don't know everybody's heart, and sometimes we make assumptions that are bad. But I've known some people that it seemed like they were, air quotes here, but they were like, quote unquote, so spiritual that they were laying their treasures up in heaven, but yet they couldn't pick up a hammer and help us build a set. And I understand there's different skill sets and all those things. Hopefully I don't have to qualify everything, but I feel like there are things when, the classic example we talk about is cleaning a toilet, right? Mm-hmm. There are things that we do that man doesn't notice.
Right.
Nobody notices, but it's part of excellence, and God sees the faithfulness of you cleaning the toilet every week or whatever it may be. God sees that faithfulness, and that is valued in heaven.
Well, does the Bible say, he that is faithful in a few things or the little things will be given many things, or, responsibility over more or blessed with more? So, God's keeping track of all that stuff, and he sees what you're doing with the little things, or whether you're willing to pick up the hammer, or whether you're willing to pick up the paintbrush, or ride the Sunday school bus if your church has a bus, or do the outreach, or pick up the garbage after Sunday school's over, because sometimes we do some crazy stuff up here, like today, where we unraveled the giant roll of paper and wrapped the kids up in it, and there was I'm laying dead on the ground, and I hear Anisha, I think it was picking up the paper as Brother Keach was explaining kind of going into the lesson part of things.
Oh, boy.
So we had quite the mess going on there. So, but if you're willing to be faithful in those things,
yes,
you'll be given opportunities for much bigger things than that.
Yeah. All right, so point number 2 is set the standard. So I wrote this down, like, sometimes when we hear, like, usually if I hear somebody say this about theirself, I did my best. It doesn't sound like a statement of fact.
Yeah.
It's not usually like, oh, okay, good. It's usually, and this, I could get blasted for this, I know, but usually, and there's exceptions, usually it means that they're making an excuse for a subpar job. Well, I did my best.
Yeah, I hear that from my kids.
And this is mean, but it's like, well, your best wasn't good enough then.
Yeah, that definitely wasn't your best. I mean, was it really? I actually wrote a note down, not to discredit the statement, but I said, don't actually set the standard. You need to be the standard.
Yes, that's good.
So something I was thinking about, you can't set an expectation for your team, for your Sunday school that you aren't actually living up to.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And so then the question oftentimes is, like, what is the standard? Like, well, I'll just tell you what I think the standard is. And I think the standard comes from a verse in Colossians, which is 3:17, which says, "And whatsoever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God and the Father by him." So to me, the standard is what I'm doing giving glory to God? Mm-hmm. Is what I'm doing providing a service to God? Is what I'm doing, excellence? Is it, making a statement for the kingdom? I mean, everything we do, whether it be in how we speak or how we act or things we do around the church or at work, I mean, all these things, we're supposed to be doing it as a way to give honor to God.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's the standard. And so...
Yeah. Well, and 6 verses later, Colossians 3:23, it says, "And whatsoever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord, not unto men."
Yeah.
And kind of like I was saying earlier, the value in heaven.
Yeah.
But I think of so our customers are the kids and the parents and the families. And so if we knew that our customer was God walking through the door, how would we perform? How would we present? How would we act if it was God walking through the door?
Oh.
And what does he say? As you've done to the least of these,
done
and so,
it to me,
yeah.
I was just thinking of a song that it's what would you do if he walked into the room? So we have this thing we're doing here in Sunday school, and we're giving it some type of effort. Then how would that effort change?
Yeah.
If he walked in while you were doing it, and if you have to say to yourself, "Oh, it would probably change a lot," maybe you're not doing it quite how you should be.
Yeah.
If you could say with some
I think
confidence,
we're guilty of that sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But if you can say with some decent confidence, "Hey, I would feel very proud of what we're doing in here if you walked in," then you're probably okay. But if you can say to yourself, "Well, I'd probably would do this different, do that different," well, then do that.
Yeah. Well, and I one of the things I put is, I think this is something that I've done. And in fact, I was thinking about this today in our Sunday school, but as like a practical step, I guess, or a practical way to look at things is when let's just talk about the property, for example. Mm-hmm. When you drive up onto the church parking lot, try to, once in a while, drive up as if you are a first-time visitor. And what I mean by that is that sometimes we get so used to the weeds by the fence that we don't notice them anymore. But imagine if you go to a different church, you go to a conference or something, and you drive up and you're like, man, they need to weed those weeds by the fence. And so what happens is with like the standard, setting the standard, what can happen, let's say that we have some event and we might clean up in our backstage, or we might reset the scene a little bit, or we weed the weeds by the fence, and we feel like we have, now we're set and ready to go, when that was the bare minimum. And now when people show up for the first time, they notice the paint scratch that we didn't fix. Well,
what can happen, I think, sometimes is that you start to lax on the standards. And we set these standards, we establish them, and then over time they can become lax, and we should never lower the standards. We should always, especially for people, we should always bring those people up to the standard, and we should always look to maybe even going above and beyond what we establish as the standard around here. And we can get in these moments where it's like, kind of go through that routine. And there's always that danger of routine. I think developing routines is good, but there's some dangers in that you can, like you said, you get in these spots where you start to ignore some of that stuff.
Yeah, and that's another thing with Pastor is he will sometimes upset the apple cart.
Oh, he will throw that right out the window. My favorite thing he does when he disrupts this routine is he makes people sit on the opposite sides of the church.
He hasn't done that in a long time.
So he hasn't done it in a while, but it's just... I love it because I like to watch everybody because I'm a people watcher, and I like to just watch people just get so firing mad from just you're just sitting on a different side of the church is like not that big of a deal, but they just get so set in these routines, set places. And I'm not gonna lie, me and my wife, we sit in like the same place every service, but there has been times where it's like we were asked to move so some guests could sit or whatever, and if you're not careful, you catch yourself getting a little bit upset. And like, well, wait a minute, hold on a second.
Yeah.
So we get in these routines and these set ways of doing things, and that's what Pastor's so good at. Is he disrupts that, because he's like, we're not here for a routine.
Yeah, exactly.
We're here to follow the Spirit, and that should be even in the Sunday school. And
things naturally, I don't want to get too far off track, but things naturally deteriorate.
Yeah.
You leave an RV over a period of time, it's going to deteriorate. Everything naturally deteriorates unless you upkeep. And so routines, if you're not careful, and like you said, routines are good. We have routines in place. But if you're not careful, you're no longer on the cutting edge, so to speak.
Yep.
So that the third point is push the envelope.
Yeah.
Now, here's something interesting. I used Google a little bit. Or AI, I don't know, whichever one. But I thought I could, so I know what it means, or what I think it means, or what I feel like it means. But push the envelope is actually an aeronautical term for pilots, and it comes from there's like now I just barely looked at this, so I might be off a little bit. But my understanding of it is there's like almost like a diagram or a graph around an airplane of the safety parameters, like this fast, this much tilt, all these different things. And when they push the envelope, they're testing maybe an aircraft or something going faster than they should, or stall falling longer than they should typically, or whatever, because they're testing and they're pushing the envelope, meaning it was that safety factor. So anyway, it's kind of a cool little detail that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But so pushing the envelope, I think that I wanted to get this in because we were talking about routine and all of that. I think that if we can get in the habit of pushing the envelope and constantly looking for better, like what can we do just a little bit better? So one example is we're in a transition today. So today in our run through, you weren't there because you were in Sunday school, but you covered for somebody. Yeah. So in our Sunday school, we kind of went through, and it was a script we've done before. Yeah. In fact, 2 years ago to almost the day, it was like 3 days off or something. But anyway, so we've done this before, and so it was pretty quick. We kind of did a run through. We didn't even really walk through anything. And I said, okay, so we are going to get out early. I said, but before we go, I just want to quickly brainstorm, and what is one or two items that we can do, do something over the top, make it epic, make it, just extra. And so, so part of that, like that paper stuff you were talking about, that was one of the ideas, it's like the accountant's supposed to come out with some paper. Well, what if we come out with this like roll and whatever, So anyway, it was like there was a few different things that we just it was like three things, and they weren't like hugely epic, but it was just something like, okay, let's push the envelope just a little bit. Right.
Well, and like I said earlier, and I said on a previous podcast, we don't want to just settle. And I said on a previous podcast, we don't want Sunday school to be lame. Yeah. Sorry for that if anybody's offended. If you have a lame Sunday school, fix it. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. But, Sunday school is not, we don't want it to be lame. The Bible's not lame. God's not lame. It's exciting. It should be joyful. So look for a way to elevate what you normally do. And I was thinking about things that we've done here that were just way over the top. So we talked about it several times, how it was a failure at the beginning, but you did that river kind of crazy thing, which was way over the top. Some of the other things we've done, which was like the spaceship where we had the door that would automatically open and close. Yes, I was just looking, I was showing some newer kids that just started in Sunday school recently with family, some of the videos from back then of that, when you would walk in, there was just the lights in that tunnel, and then the door would open up. That was so good. And then, or there was also the pirate ship, which the recent one we did was pretty good. The one a few years ago I really liked, when Brother Tim Daly brought that like legit like log.
Let me see what's going on. Somebody's knocking. One of our Sunday school kids is out there knocking on the door.
Nice. So Brother Tim Daly brought like a tree up here. I think is what it was.
Yeah.
And we set that
With
big
that mast. Yes.
Yeah, the big giant mast up there with these big huge ropes, and it was over the top.
Oh, it was awesome.
Just stuff like that. I mean, like I said earlier about my brother-in-law doing the fire breathing thing. He learned that on his own without being asked or anything like. It was over the top. So think of these ways that you can kind of elevate your Sunday school and think big. Don't think small.
Yeah, think big and be pushing and have encourage that in your team.
Yeah.
To be thinking big and going over the top. And the thing is like I think like if we can constantly push ourselves to that next level and constantly be looking like what is that next thing and create that as a culture, because like you said, like Brennan just did that on his own. And it's a culture around here. I mean, we have people that buy some epic costumes, you know. And like one of the things I thought about when you were mentioning some of those is the Coliseum, and the thing we did like a big waterfall and stuff.
That thing was awesome.
So, and we are when this airs, we should be in the middle of it. But basically, we're building that Coliseum and stuff again, so that'll be cool.
Yep.
So, okay, so point number 4 is, and we're running out of time, but part of something bigger, being a part of something bigger. And this was kind of a focus on the kids.
Yeah.
And I think kids and staff, but teaching the kids to look outside of their own little world. So kids, even good kids, are selfish just by nature.
Yeah.
We're selfish. We're self-absorbed. And so... But teaching kids to look outside their own self and say, okay, God has, we always talk about God has a plan for you, but God has a plan for you to impact those around you.
Right.
And sometimes when we talk about like Good Samaritan story or something, sometimes I'll talk to the kids and, we try not to have an obvious separation between kids that come on the bus and kids that attend church. But sometimes I'm trying to get the point across to our quote-unquote church kids that, hey, even though a kid might not dress like me, they might not have a family here, we need to be the Good Samaritan,
Yeah, we always need to keep the kingdom in mind and remember that it's not just about you and not about just your little corner, just your little space, just your church. There's a bigger picture out there. We need to always keep that in focus, and you just never know that person you might be interacting with or that Sunday school kid. You never know what could happen if you just do whatever God has called you to do. I mean, they could turn out, you just never know.
You never know.
I was thinking about just now, so a friend of mine, I call him my friend now, before he was just my barber, but I invited him to church for over a year and a half. Invited him to our events. We did the fireworks show and we do Heart of Christmas. I even offered to buy his family tickets to Heart of Christmas, and just worked at it. There's moments I got frustrated and was like, I'm just not sure what's going to happen. And then out of nowhere, randomly on October Sunday night, he shows up for church with his family, and we were not having church that night. Like the 2 times we might cancel all year because we had October conference the week. That week.
So we just had a Sunday morning. Yeah.
And so I'm at Goodwill and with my wife or whatever, and I get a call from one of the brothers, and he tells me this, and I'm just like,
of all the times,
kidding me? So I got frustrated, but I just kept at it, and him and his family are still here since October, and because of that, then another family came, which is part of his family, and they've brought their friends, and it's just made this huge impact. I would say about 13. I think it's a total of maybe 13 between the 2 families. So you just never know what that one person you're interacting with, how big that can affect the whole kingdom. And the same with these kids. I mean, you never know that one kid could have a family of 10 at home that you just have no idea about.
Yeah.
Or they may grow up and have left and then remember, hey, that church I used to go to when I was a kid. And then they show up, and then who knows what God turns them into. You always got to keep the bigger picture in mind.
Yeah, exactly. It goes back to something I say often is this is what we do. Mm-hmm. And we're not, I mean, okay, in one way we're results driven. We want to look for results and goals and all of these things. But don't expect that, okay, I'm let's use exercise. Don't expect that you're going to go run a mile today and you're just going to, all the fat and flab is just going to shred off tomorrow. It takes time and effort, and the real key, I'm preaching to myself here, the real key is to create a discipline and say, like what's James Clear with Atomic Habits says, I'm the kind of person that fill in the blank. I'm the kind of person that exercises. Yeah. Not I'm going to exercise tomorrow. Not necessarily just saying that, but I am the kind of person that. And so going to your point of what you're talking about with that family is saying, I'm the kind of person that is a witness. I'm the kind of person that sets an example. I'm the kind of person that does outreach. All these things, and the results come.
If at the end of this life you're walking through the pearly gates and you're walking through just by yourself, that is not a successful life.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
This is something I think about for me, and I think this is the mindset we all should have. When we walk through those pearly gates, we should want to walk through hand in hand with as many people as possible. All those are people that you affected and impacted during your lifetime, that because of you being around them or them interacting with you or being friends with you or whatever it is, it helped lead them to a saving relationship with God. And you can look to your left and you can look to your right and say, I've had a successful life.
Years ago, there's a song. Have you heard that song, Thank You for Giving to the Lord? It's an old song. Mm-mm. I think it's Ray Boltz, which I know there's some things about him recently, but he had some good songs.
Back in the day, Ray Boltz. We're not talking about more recent Ray Boltz.
Back in the day. I think, I'm not positive it was his song, but years ago we did a skit/play to it. Mm-hmm. The young people, in fact, Brother Chuck Mozingo, the late Brother Chuck Mozingo, is the one that directed it. And I was one of the kids in it, but it's thank you for giving to the Lord. And then it says, in the lyrics, it says, like, one by one they came, each one somehow touched by your generosity or something like that. And it's talking about this guy goes to heaven, and then somebody's, I don't know, I can't remember who it is, but the perspective of the song, but it's somebody saying, thank you for giving to the Lord. And then, so we all had, like, I think I had a hard hat on. Mm-hmm. So we were these different roles of people coming, and we were lined up, and it was probably a good 10 of us at least. And Elderber's back then, I remember he was crying. Mm-hmm. It was powerful. Just a little skit, to a song, like Human Video, I think they call them. But that's kind of, it made me think of it when you said that, is we should be, and bring it to Sunday school. It should be that we impacted these kids' lives because of our excellence, because of how much we pushed and said, no, it's not good enough. Yep. And we refuse to settle.
We're not going to settle. We're not going to just have it be mundane. We're going to keep pushing, because we know that if we do that, we're going to impact these kids in a powerful way, and that will lead them to a saving relationship with God. We want them to be saved. That's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. That's the bigger picture. That's what excellence will get us to, is having these kids not just come to Sunday school, but when they get older, start coming to church and really, ultimately, at the end of this life, be saved. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. You started this off, and now I normally am very careful with this, but I'm just going to mention it because, this is getting aired in the future. And so you started this off with talking about Daniel. Mm-hmm. And what's really cool is I got a text right before we started the podcast. I got a text for tonight's title and the premise behind the title. And it's about Daniel. And it's about that same exact line of thinking that you were just talking about. So you're anointed, brother. This podcast is anointed.
Brother, I was feeling it. Just Not because I felt something about it, and then just in talking, it's just really, it's given me a lot of things I've been thinking about just while we've been talking, and even today when you sent me this, it's amazing to be a part of the kingdom. It's amazing to be a part of this thing that God's doing, and to have that spirit of excellence, to watch God use you in ways that you just never can you imagine Daniel himself probably was like, there's no way I could do anything, and then to be looked at in the way that he was, and to have the impact that he had.
Well, and when we look at something like that, and like I think of the Hall of Faith, the by faith chapter, Hebrews 11, it's not a choice. I mean, if they did that, can't we elevate our Sunday school just a little bit? I mean, can't we? And I'm speaking to us too. Yeah. I'm not just blasting anybody out there. No. I mean, we got our backstage right now is a mess. And
that is your fault, Anisha. No, I'm just kidding.
She did, and she did come down with me the other night, and she did a bunch of cleanup. But it's still just terrible, and it's not her fault. But it's just terrible.
We're terrible to her back there, and I apologize. I get back there and I just throw my stuff on the floor. I say, "Here you go."
Hey, so I've told this story before, but I got to say it really quick before we end. Is when Brother Philip Booker, came the first time he came. He was on his podcast. He was talking, and that's Apostolic Children's Ministry 2.0. But he was talking about our Sunday school and a bunch of kind words. But one of the things he said, it was hilarious, is he's like, and they have a backstage manager that you get done with your costume, you throw it on the floor, and they hang it up. Man. That was prophecy, Brother Booker.
God bless her. She puts up with a lot of us back there, that's for sure.
Well, let's recap.
Yeah.
Number one is what could be. Think of what could be. What could this elevate to?
Yeah,
How far could we go?
Oh, man. The possibilities are endless with God, so don't think too small.
Don't think too small. And then number two, set the standard. I got a misspelling on the PowerPoint there, but or not PowerPoint, but the iPad.
Set test
standard. So set test standard. And I liked what you said. We need to be the standard.
100%.
We need to be the standard.
Yep.
And then number three, push the envelope. So be on that cutting edge. Be always looking like, how can we be better?
Step outside of your comfort zone. Push the envelope. Push the limits of what you think you're capable of and your Sunday school is capable of.
I read a book a few months ago. It might have been a year ago now. Unreasonable Hospitality. And it's about the restaurant industry, but the concepts are incredible. And I didn't have time, or I didn't take the time to grab some examples. I wanted to grab some examples from that book. But we can go over the top on something where it's like, well, that's crazy. You don't need to do all that. But maybe just once in a while, do it,
Yeah.
Take it over the top. And then number four, part of something bigger. Show your staff, your team, but also the kids. We're part of something big here. It's not just about me.
It's God's kingdom. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. All right. Well, that's a wrap.
All right.